Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Sunday, September 17th, 2017. This is Intrinsic Motivation from a Homie's Perspective, and I am Hamza.
And I am David.
And today we are privileged to have a podcast with Sheri Friedman. Sheri Friedman is actually a local. We've been speaking with everyone across the country. Sheri is actually here in Atlanta. She is a intuitive healer here in Atlanta. Her website is sherifriedman.com, and she works in the tarot. So welcome to the podcast, Sheri.
Totally my privilege. Thank you for having me. It's a huge honor. And
Absolutely.
I'm excited about what we're going to do.
Absolutely. And just a brief history, Sheri and I met at a conference at Phoenix and Dragon. I guess I live there, and she lives there too. We crossed paths. We were going to cross paths at some point, and really liked talking to her over the past couple of months. We actually interviewed her friend Karen Miller about the ayahuasca retreats in Peru a couple of weeks ago, and wanted to add Sheri so we could introduce her to our audience.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, nice to have you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the tarot, that'd be great.
Okay, so just kind of a brief history. Since I was a young child, always kind of interested in metaphysical things. In college, I'd always hang out at the metaphysical bookstore and not really understanding why or anything else, just finding a connection there. And eventually in my real early 20s, a woman by the name of Rainbow read my tarot cards. And it all made sense to me at that point. I was really fascinated by the process, and she gave me some really interesting information that enriched my life in a really beautiful way. She had read my cards, and the death card came up, and not knowing anything about the tarot, I assumed that meant that someone was about to die. And the interesting part about the deck that I read and the deck that she read at the time, a lot of the actual names on the cards don't really specifically mean, a death card does not mean someone's about to die necessarily. It's really a card of transformation, external transformation. And she recommended that I speak with my father about some of his lifetime experiences, like what he did when he was younger. He was in the Coast Guard. And so the next time I went home, I sat down with him and asked him about his time in the Coast Guard. And that was really an interesting way for us to bond and share some time together. And if I hadn't asked those questions, that information would have been lost to me forever. And it changed my life. He happened to die a few years later, but it was a really pivotal point for me. I understood how you can support someone in their growth and their relations with their family and friends. And, I was kind of hooked at that point. So I got my own deck and taught myself how to read it. And then I came across a healer from Israel, and I went to a lecture, and it made a lot of sense. And then he was teaching a 5-day course following that, and everything just seemed to line up. And I took the course, and it was the first time in my life that learning came easy. Everything made sense. I could do it. The techniques that he was teaching, I was like, oh, my gosh, I could totally do that. And I felt like I was almost co-leading the class with him, and I knew that was also an area I wanted to follow. So, those two things in combination really helped me open up my intuitive abilities. And now I work with clients one-on-one, both over the phone and in person. And a normal reading, how it unfolds is I will spend the first couple minutes tuning in at a higher level, establishing a connection between us. And then I'll lay out a hand of tarot cards. I'll tell my client what I see in the cards. And then I open it up for them to comment what makes sense, what they might have more questions about. And then we go through a lot of questions. I'll ask them some deep questions about where they are in their lives, what they want, where their alignment is, and then we build on that. I help them to understand where their reasoning is coming from. It's historical data, family values, collective agreement. And, I hold up the mirror. Nothing that I'm going to say in a reading is anything that they don't already know, but by seeing it from a different perspective, they can really take hold of their own lives and make more conscious choices moving forward from a place, like I said, of their truth and authenticity, and out of making choices based in fear. And so, it creates an enormous amount of joy for me. And, it's a great way of being of service. So that's kind of the long, short version of what I do.
Wow.
That was a mouthful, huh?
So, wow, okay. I'm noticing, let's see, now obviously I haven't had a tarot reading in years, and now that I hear you talking about it, I'm like, I want to go get one. I want one.
I know how that feels because I read my own cards. So.
Oh, do you? Oh, interesting. All right. So, what is the? So I'm looking here. You use the I guess it's pronounced Thoth Tarot deck.
Yeah, the Thoth. It was created by Aleister Crowley, who has kind of a interesting background. He's an occultist, and he was a member of the Golden Dawn Society. And he's kind of a controversial figure in history, but in conjunction with Lady Frida Harris, she painted the cards. They're all paintings, and then, of course, images of the paintings. I feel like it's one of the most in-depth and mystical decks that I've ever run across. No matter how long you study this deck, you'll still learn more about it. It has so many different layers to it. There's astrology, there's Kabbalistic images, there's Hebrew letters, there's, the different the different earth signs, archetypal images, Jungian, images. It's just like there's so much to it that, on one hand, it's a really challenging deck to learn because there's so many layers, but that also creates the real beauty in the deck.
So how many different types of decks are there out there? Is it just endless, or is there just a finite number? Or?
No, it's pretty endless. People are always creating new decks, and a lot of people create personal decks for themselves based on other decks. You had just mentioned another guest on your podcast, Karen Miller. She's just recently learning this tarot deck, and she decided to create her own tarot deck from it. So cutting out pictures and putting the meanings of how she interprets the cards on the reverse of it was a really fun way for her to learn the deck and the meanings. But they're kind of broken into a number of different categories. There's the traditional tarot deck, which is what I read, and there's probably the most famous in the States is the Rider-Waite deck. So these type of tarot decks have a major arcana, the minor arcana broken into 4 suits, and then the court cards also broken into 4 suits. But some people read just your basic card deck and use it in the exact same way. And then the other type of decks are like the fairy decks and the angel decks, and you just pull a couple cards, and on the actual card is an image and then a meaning of that card, an interpretation of it. So it's not quite as, it's more basic, and it's to get a quick answer. These other types of decks are more complex in how you read them, and how you lay out the hand, really influences the meaning of the cards also.
Would the complexity contribute to the different types of reading that you would have? Let's say someone had come off the street, or they had seen you on Google. Would it be more basic, and then the greater you have a relationship with them, it would be more comprehensive?
No, not really. Because actually, when I see a new client, I don't want to know anything about them before I read. So I'm not using my own experience or knowledge that I have about them to color the reading based on my historical data, and wanting to take care of them from an egoic standpoint. So the less I know about someone, the better the reading. So even with my clients that I see on a regular basis, when we come in, it's just, hey, how are you? And then we have kind of the awkward silence until we sit down and I open up the hand, because I don't want to know any additional information. So how in-depth we get into the reading really depends on what the client is looking for, if they want to discuss more, or if they want to dive in a little bit deeper and get information that way. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. It also would. My second question would be, just in the preliminary research in your subject matter, I noticed, it's across the board. You have some people that want a daily reading, or they want a reading in relation to their astrological sign. And it seems like the question to you is, if I have a daily reading, do I have to see you every day? Like, can I leave my house before I speak to Sheri, or how does that work?
Oh, yeah, I want you in independence. Yeah, the last thing I want is you to be looking to me for information. My job is to get you connected to your own internal guidance system, so you don't need me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, completely agree with that. So generally, how long is a tarot reading, or does it just vary?
Clients will see me for a half hour or an hour and a half. It just depends on how much time they have, and how deep they want to get into it, or if they have a number of different areas they want to address. And, of course, in a realistic way, their budget.
Yeah. I can imagine that. So if you were to give someone a reading, and let's say after that reading, that person went to see another tarot reader, I guess it's kind of based on the cards that get pulled, but let's just say that it was the same cards that were laid out. Would that person read and interpret it the same way you would, or is it just completely different amongst readers how they interpret the cards?
Well, it's a little hard for me to say, because I don't really, I can't be responsible for how other people read the deck. Mm-hmm. All I can really say to you is that my experience with my deck, which is really an energetic relationship, mm-hmm. I may be a little off in how I'm interpreting it, but the cards are never wrong.
Oh, okay.
So I can't really speak to how other people, their relationship with their deck, how they interpret their cards. That's really kind of a question that I couldn't answer.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And the only reason I answered it is just more curious, because I know in years past, when I've done readings. You can give someone a reading, and then they could go walk out that room and go sit in front of another reader and get totally different information, but at the same time it's still valid. So it's not like just because you're sitting in front of another reader, they're seeing the exact same thing that this other reader, saw. They could just be seeing something completely different, but it's still valid to the readee. So I was just kind of curious how that, how that kind of worked. That's all.
And I think that if I was to read somebody's cards in the morning and in the afternoon, it would probably be pretty much the same information. But if they came and saw me and then went to see someone else, there's free will there.
Yeah.
So the other reader might be channeling in information that is also extraordinarily supportive to the client, but from a different perspective. So yes, everybody has their own way of reading and their own information that comes through. The only thing that I would mention is that if you're seeing a reader and they are giving you information that is at all fear-based, I would, caution you on the validity of that information. Because that is not that the action of fear is to build more fear. Or if they were to say, I see some things in this hand and I can help you if you come back to me for the next 3 weeks, twice a week. If they are using the cards to pull you in any way, I would also kind of have my intuition sparked up and say, is this in good alignment? My job is to be a healing source and to empower the people that I see, not to put them in any type of relationship with fear about what I can do for them or what they would need to do to move forward.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah.
So there's a really cool quote that I'd like to read, and it reads, "Falsehood is invariably the child of fear in one form or another." Does that ring a bell at all to you, Sheri?
Yes, absolutely. I live my life from a place of trying to be fearless without fear. The job, like I said, the job of fear is to grow more fear. Fear hangs out in the corner. It's a diffuse gray mass, and every time you look at it, you build it. Fear is a lie, and it's built on an illusion. One day the fear is going to tell you to go work out. The next day when you're working out, the fear is going to tell you to go have a milkshake. Fear always works both sides of the fence, and it's built in separation. And my work is about bringing things in, unity, not power over another person, not separation. So I try to show my clients how to move away from fear. Even in their decision-making during our sessions, all decisions will come down to either love or fear. And love not being, I'm in love with that person, more from a place of truth. And fear is always coming from some type of other information. It could be your smaller egoic self. It could be historical data, collective agreements, what the society as a whole has agreed on, family values, religion. I'm trying to get them to move away from that because that's really not in alignment with their truth. It's just information trying to inform them from the past how they will be okay in the future. My work is about what they're doing now and how to empower them from this point.
The reason why I like that quote is it's from Senor Aleister Crowley.
Oh, okay, great. Ooh, maybe I should have known that.
and now, so that was my next question because, you started out, there are, like you mentioned, there are plenty of cards out there that you can gravitate towards, but you gravitated towards the toss cards. And I wanted to know how far down the rabbit hole you went with any of Aleister's teachings.
Not far. I do have the Book of Toss, and I picked it up a couple times, and I was like, this is some crazy shit. It wasn't in alignment for where I was at. but I did feel a strong connection to the cards, so I made the cards my own. And people will read cards and really learn them, and a lot of the meanings can change based on the reader.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know a lot about him, but I am grateful for this deck because it has served me well and my clients.
Do you also feel like when, you've been in it for some time, if you've had the exposure in college, and now you do this professionally, do you find that your readings are more encompassing, or are you finding similar themes from way back when?
I think that as a reader, I find deeper meaning always. I don't think there's a week that goes by that I don't see another connection between different cards and deeper meaning. So that's, I think, one of the reasons that it keeps me so involved in this particular deck is I'm always, uncovering or unveiling new aspects of the deck.
Oh, yeah, I see. Okay. What was the question I was going to ask you? And I just slipped my mind. I'm a brain freeze here.
Well, while you're thinking of it, the question I had as far as cards is, like you said, sometimes it'll come up the same and there may be a theme. Have you found that in reading or in your readings with your clients that potentially they may be mirrors of something that you're going through on another level?
Yes, absolutely. If I do a quick reading for myself in the morning before I see clients, there's usually, anywhere from 1 to 3 cards that will continue to show up in the readings with the clients. So then that begs the question, am I picking up on some type of energy that my clients are some type of process they're going through, and I'm feeling that? Or is it, my process that is also kind of similar to their process that day? So I don't really know the answer to that question, but often I'll see a couple cards coming in that keep reappearing that day. So that's kind of an interesting question, but yes, that's true.
So as an intuitive healer, you, besides the tarot, do you do intuitive healings on people? Is that, or do they kind of get the healing in the course of getting the reading from the tarot reading?
Yes, absolutely. And I also do some more direct work with clients, and I act as a clear and conscious choice channel, and let energy run through me to the client without directing how it should be appropriated. In other words, if they have an elbow issue, I'm not going to direct the energy towards their elbow, because as being a witness to this energy flow to them with the intent of it being for their highest good, healing, and evolution, I know that Spirit, God, whatever that would mean to you, knows how to best support the person across from me. Yeah. So my job is to get all my thoughts out of the way, hold this energy stream, and keep it open. And, that's my total focus. And then when I kind of hear, okay, it's time, you can start closing it down. Or if I get other information, I'll act on that. So that's a more direct kind of energetic transmission. And I don't walk away with, okay, now, did I heal your elbow? It's not me doing the healing. It's me witnessing it and being part of it so that I can hold it in the physical through my knowing.
Okay. Oh, interesting. So I gotta keep all these questions in my mind. I keep forgetting. Okay, let's see.
Well, while you're thinking of that, I had a question for you as far as repeat clients. So, in my experience, there may be someone that comes in and they have an issue that you address, yet they would come back 3 weeks later or 3 months later with the same theme. How do you break someone out of a pattern that may not be to their highest good?
It's not for me to decide what their pattern for their highest good is. In other words, if they've signed on in this lifetime to learn through a particular challenge, then I'm not going to say, that's, like, let's move past this. I will continue to support them and give them the tools that I feel are best for them, that I have available, to support them in the process of where they are on that day they come to see me.
Mm.
So we might have discussions about, looking at it in a different way to hopefully open up a space so that they can move through it with more ease. But I'm not going to, there's no judgment. In order for me to do this work, it has to come from a place of seeing the divinity in everyone that I meet. Whoever's sitting across from me,
yes,
they are perfect and whole just the way they are. And whatever I can do to support them in their evolution, in their level of consciousness, in getting more comfortable for who they are, what they are, right at that moment, that's going to be, the focus of the work.
Mm. So in a tarot reading, do you address and or talk about anything future, or is everything kind of present time?
Well, I like to keep it present time.
Okay.
There are many readers who do great psychic work and are more of the predictive type of tarot readers, or just do straight-on predictive work. That's not my focus, because from my own belief standpoint, if I am telling a client what's going to happen in the future, I am really stripping them of their free will.
I agree.
And I'm all about empowering them to make the choices and decisions that will most support their growth. So, the caveat to that is I do the Celtic Cross reading in most of my tarot, in most of my sessions. And there is a short-term prognosis of a month to 6 weeks, a medium range, which is 2 months, and then a long range, which is 6 months. But that information is just to show them where they are right now. If they continue with their thought processes exactly as they are in this moment, this is what's likely to unfold. But as soon as, the real point of it is, as soon as they stand up after our session, they have new information, and that's going to shift the reading. So the reading is really only good for that, if we froze time right then and there. So I don't do predictive work, but I help them to see, the processes they're going through right now, what those same types of decisions may look like in the future. And so giving them more tools so they can get more, it may be exactly what they're kind of working towards. And so I would support them in that, but I want them to have the idea that their choices now impact everything. As soon as they stand up from the table, those choices are fluid.
Yeah. Do you find that people, when they come to you, do they come to you kind of a mindset, well, I'm coming to Sheri, and she's going to, do they come with that future kind of mentality that you're going to tell them about their future, or is everyone kind of different? Because I know just in my own personal experience of doing readings, a lot of times, I'm coming to the clairvoyant or the psychic, and he's going to tell me what's going to happen or what I should do, and I have to kind of, tell them, no, I don't really do future readings. I kind of just read in the present time. So I didn't know people coming through the door to you, what kind of mentality in general they're coming with.
When somebody reaches out to me through my website or contacts me through Google My Business or my phone, however they get in contact with me and they call for a reading or they send me an email, I'm going to assess that out. Yeah, I can kind of tell with my intuition what they're looking for. Yeah. And, a lot of people do call me and say, I want to find out if my boyfriend's cheating. I want to find out about, what my ex's new phone number is, what's going to happen, blah, 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 blah. And their real focus is knowing the future so that they can be safe now. And I make it real clear to them that that's not my focus. And, if appropriate, I will pass them on to some other psychics that I know that concentrate more in the, the predictive work.
Yeah.
So I kind of weed them out. If they're looking for that, I can tell them what I do and how I work, and then I ask them if that's a good, if that's in alignment with what they're looking for. And a lot of times I'll hear, well, let me give it some thought, and so that's a no.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I just briefly did a reading, gave this guy a reading, and that's what the whole reading was. He wanted me to tell him what he should do. He had all these questions about his job and this and that, and he wanted me to make those decisions for him. And it was like, look, I can't do that. I can't tell you whether you should quit your job or leave your job. And I ended up reading him, his mother, and his sister. And his mother was the exact same way, but his sister was completely different. She was just sat there and just listened to everything, as I was reading, and didn't have those kind of expectations of, well, tell me what I should do,
Yeah,
So.
I mean, in a reading, I'll hear, well, what do you think I should do? And that's always the question that I ask them back. Well, really, what do you feel?
Yeah.
What's the emotional trigger that's coming up for you that you want me to, help you with in this?
Yeah.
So it's about getting them, I don't want to tell them, and I'm not going to tell a client what to do. I'm going to help the client get clear about what feels best for them, and then help them to move towards that.
Okay. What's the youngest person you ever gave a tarot reading to?
The youngest person,
probably
18, 19, something like that. Yeah. I don't tend to do young children because they don't need it. They're already so connected into source that they know their own truth.
Yeah,
and then they know their own truth, and
so the adults get in the way.
Yeah, well, it's our conditioning that gets in the way.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. That's what I was going to really ask is, have you ever gave any children any readings, and is there a certain age that you would recommend, to get it or not? So that you kind of answer that question, is you don't usually do children because you kind of know.
I'm going to go back just a hair there. I did do a tarot reading party for a 17-year-old. And she had all of her girlfriends there. And so I did a mini reading for her and her friends. They were still in high school. They were going into their senior year. And that was really lovely because it was a real opportunity to empower these young women as they started to go into this next phase of life of making choices about college and the next step.
Yeah.
And to helping them get into alignment with that, if that's the direction they were headed. So that was a really lovely opportunity for me, and that's the work that kind of thrills me the most, is empowering people rather than, I'm not interested in the dog and pony show, like, they sit down and say, okay, prove to me that you're good, I don't need to prove myself to anybody. Like, why are you here?
Yeah. The prove it crowd, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
I like that empowerment point with the girls from 17. it just further proves that females are more advanced than the guys are as far as across the board. It sounds like, they develop a lot faster and such. Yeah. Do you find that there are more?
There was plenty of boy questions in that too.
Oh, sure. I'm sure. Do you find that there are more women than guys that are coming to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say probably at least 80% of my clients are women.
Oh, wow.
And that's kind of across the board with there's a really large psychic community here in Atlanta, metaphysical community, and, from Reiki to psychic work to mediumship. And, the number of men that are seeking out readings is slowly increasing, and that's opening up. But it's really predominantly women who are looking for readings.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think when I was a student, I think it was like a 7-to-1 ratio. There was one man for every 7 women. And I don't know what Horizon was like. Hamza could probably talk about it. I'm sure the women outnumbered the men there, too.
Yeah, but I'm not going to share that evil laugh that you just did, David.
I think the number of men who are doing readings is growing faster than the number of men that are seeking readings.
Interesting.
From my perspective.
Yeah.
So across the board, where from a 17 to a woman slightly older, and they may come in for, is Johnny going to take me to the prom? But I like what you said earlier about you try to connect them with their collective agreement and where their alignment is. So while they may be thinking about one thing, do you find that it's something else entirely different that maybe they need to focus on first, and then that could better answer what they initially came to you for?
I think that there is a bit of unveiling to find out. It's often more kind of uncovering the fear that is prompting the question. So their question might be a relationship question, but really, it might be a safety issue. So it's kind of going past the initial question to why they need that question answered. What part of them will feel better if they know that information. Does that answer it?
Yeah, no, that's very powerful. I think a lot of people have one idea of a certain direction, but if they haven't covered a foundation, which it sounds like you uncover, right, they can cover a lot more.
And by understanding that foundation, it empowers them in all the different areas. That's the tool.
Right. Absolutely.
Do you within the course of the reading, does past life stuff come up, or do you ever cover anything like that?
There is. I do believe that there's bleed through from other lifetimes, but it's my belief that all these, like in this reality, we're working within time and space. It's very sequential, and it's sequential for our opportunities to learn and progress. But I also believe that it's just valid for this reality that we live in right now. So all of these lifetimes are kind of happening simultaneously in like a vertical column, but nothing is kind of solid. So it shifts, and like if your soul has come through to learn about addiction, and you work your way through that, and you heal up that part in you, maybe that's going to bleed through to other lifetimes. So those other lifetimes don't have to learn through that process. So I think everything is kind of happening simultaneously, and there is bleed through. And I think maybe part of that bleed through might be if, we go to China and have a strong connection to the culture, to the landscape. Maybe we're having quite a few other lifetimes of, simultaneously in China, and we feel that connection. So, these are just kind of all theories that I think are possibilities, but they make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of agree. I've always kind of been in that mindset that's all kind of happening simultaneously. So it's interesting to hear someone else say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I will tell you, there are some days where I just kind of kick back and wait for my future self to do things that I need to do today.
I love
I'm
that.
like, get on it, guy. I'm waiting on you. It's a simultaneous timeline here, buddy.
Right. Take care of it.
I'm taking the day off today.
Right. I'm in alignment for you to take care of this.
Right. Well, I kind of say that in jest, but it's something that I grapple with, where if I try to control and handle something, I find that when I take a step back and let go, I get a lot more done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that control is usually a form of fear. Yes, we all have responsibilities, pay our bills, pay the taxes. We're in the society. We want to we have an agreement to operate in the society, and then we can make choices about how we do everything else. Like, can I stay present enough today to just deal with what's right in front of me? If I'm doing that, that's coming from a place of tremendous potentiality, because I'm not trying to control the situations that I'm dealing with on an everyday basis from a place of fear, which already starts to shut it down and comes from a limited perspective based in my history.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I don't feel like doing the paperwork, and I'll put it off for quite a while. And you know what? When that paperwork is on fire, I can like go right through it with no problem whatsoever. So it's kind of a practice for me also, Hamza, is if I really don't feel like doing it, I don't do it.
Interesting. How much does numbers play a factor in tarot readings or numerology? Are they related or?
Not sure I understand what you're asking.
Well, is there? I mean, I know like on the cards and stuff you have images, but are numbers, numerology, numbers associated within tarot readings at all, or no?
Yes, absolutely. They are, numerology is embedded in there's numerology tarot cards. Just about any kind of cards you can look at, there's somebody who's done some type of it. But it's especially significant in the minor arcana. So just to kind of give you a brief overview of the tarot, there's the major arcana cards. Those are the most important cards of the deck. They hold the most weight. Those are the archetypal processes we go through as human beings. And then there is the minor arcana, and that's just the nitty-gritty of everyday life. The minor arcana is broken into 4 categories. Wands, which are your will to act, the potentiality, the fire. There are cups, which are emotions, very feminine. Then we have the swords, which are thinking cards, intellect, mind chatter. And then the 4th suit is the disc. It's DISKS. And those are anything in the physical: job, finances, home environment, physical health. Each of those 4 suits go from 1 to 10. So 1, the energy comes in, and then you start to play with the energy. You understand it, you build it. And at 5 are the crisis cards. Those are always the cards of upheaval. So the energy will shift on those 5 cards so that it can fully build in support of the process that you're working on to 10, which is the completion card. So if you're doing a reading and you get 2 or 3 5 cards, you know that this person is having a really hard time. As opposed to 1 card, if those ace cards, that means all new things are coming in, new energies coming in all areas of their life. if you get those 10 cards or the 8, 9 cards, they're starting to finish up. They've worked through a lot of their emotions, and they're getting ready to start a new process. So the numbers are significant in the minor arcana. The major arcana, it goes from 0 to 22. So there's 22 major arcana cards, and those are broken into kind of thirds. The 0 card is when the energy comes in. The 1 card is when you start playing with the energy. The 2 is when you connect the intuitive nature. You understand that there's different dimensions. And then the 3 is the femininity, the mothering card. The 4 is the structure, the emperor, the boss card. And you go through these different processes, and then you eventually learn how to manifest and how to bring things into your own reality. And then you shift to another level of consciousness, and you look at things differently from a new, higher perspective, and you go through these processes again. You can skip cards very easily just by letting go of fear. But, that's kind of, if I'm looking at a hand and there's a lot of cards that are 0, 1, 3, 8, I know that this person is playing with a lot of new energy.
Interesting.
That was really helpful. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And then, I didn't mention the third. So let me just, in that brief overview, which did not sound very brief, there's also the court cards in a deck. That's the third level of the deck. And those are also broken into those 4 same suits. And these are parts of the personality that show up in the hand. So the hand has the major arcana, those big processes, the nitty-gritty of everyday life, and then parts of our personality that show up. So, there's lots of layers, and then depending on how the reader lays out the cards will also change the meaning of the cards. So, there's a bit of an art to it.
Do you ever ask a person what their astrological sign is? Does that have anything to do with any of it?
Yes, all the cards have astrological signs attached to them. I don't go very deep into that. That's that's just not my forte. For me, they're better off being an astrologer. I'm more interested in the mind chatter. I want to know what they're thinking. I want to know where it's coming from. That's more of my focus. For me, the astrological is a little bit more fate related. And so that's not really as much of my focus, like kind of understanding their astrological sign and what that means in their life kind of gives you a set of rules that says this is what's likely to happen. And I want to pull them back into their freedom and not be attached to this is my story and it's because I'm a Leo.
Yeah. Are you a Leo, Hamza?
No, I'm a Cancer, but I'm on the cusp of Leo.
Oh, okay.
Did I laugh too hard at that one? That was
hilarious. Okay. Well, I will admit I'm fully Aries.
That's really interesting, Sheri, because it makes me think of how I was taught to psychically read, and sometimes we'll do a line reading. So there'll be a number of us in one line reading one person, and we may have different interpretations. And so with David's question and your answer with regards to astrology, I didn't know if you ever do a reading where it may lead to some section of astrology where you may say, okay, now you need to speak with so-and-so. They would complement my reading with an astrology viewpoint. Has that ever happened?
I don't think I understand what you're asking. Do I refer people to an astrologer?
Right. I'm just like, as far as, hey, I've answered my capability, my capacity. I think this is complete. However, I need to refer you to this person to answer what you're looking for in that specification.
Yeah, I fully am in support of other readers and any opportunity I have, and it usually happens when somebody's trying to make an appointment with me, and I don't feel like it's a good alignment, that what they're looking for is different than, the focus of my work, then I will refer them to someone else. Occasionally somebody comes in, we go through a reading, and they are really interested in connecting with someone who has crossed over. And I might sense that person coming in and making their presence known, but, my forte is not giving them direct messages from crossed over, loved ones or guides, archangels, that kind of thing. So I will definitely, in my arsenal, I have lots of great mediumship readers, and we'll pass that information along to them. I feel like the more I can share, the more I can be of service.
We had a podcast earlier with Yvonne, and I believe you know her as well. So
right,
very,
and so
very,
both of her mediumship classes. So
yes,
she's
very
the one who kind of helped open that up for me.
Oh, small world, very small world. So for your readings, you do one-on-one, or you do it over the phone or in person. And in my preliminary research, I noticed two things. One, I noticed that there are a lot of searches for tarot readings in Hindi. And I also noticed that there were a lot of searches for tarot readings online. And so I wanted to know if you're dealing or you have any interface with other cultures, and if there's any intention to start doing readings online via Skype or other means.
Well, I do. Some of my clients I do by, we do it over Skype or FaceTime, or just over the phone. It's just kind of whatever they would prefer. As far, are you asking about like some of the 1-800 tarot calls?
You see that a lot, and I know from our side, they usually, $1 a minute type of reading. We don't do those type of readings, so I didn't know if you were getting any of that from a tarot side.
Yeah, I do get people who call that just want $1 a minute. They want a 10-minute reading or a 15-minute reading, and that's just not what I do. That's not the type. I have an investment in supporting the process, and I find that if somebody wants a really quick answer like that, then I'm not really empowering their choice making. I'm telling them from my perspective. And, I'm not going to tell somebody what to do. So a really short reading like that isn't part of my, what I do best. So I refer them to someone else.
You offer quality readings is what you wanted to say.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I won't say that, because I do know some psychic readers who will nail it every single time. And they can just turn it right on and, predict, tell the person what they want to hear or what they see. But that's just not comfortable for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in all the 30 years that you've been doing tarot readings, what is it about it that you enjoy the most?
At the end, I'm able to look into the eyes or look into the soul, even if they're not sitting across from me, and I get to witness the divinity in the person sitting across from me.
Wow. Great answer.
And usually they stand up and they were like, oh, gosh, I feel better. I feel like, they're kind of like surprised, like, oh, I feel kind of lighter. And I'm thinking to myself, so do I,
Yeah.
So it's a gift to be able to participate in some deep listening and deep seeing with someone. And that's what, that's why I am just feel so grateful for what I do because I get these opportunities.
Yeah.
So follow what you love.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. There was an episode on earlier this week on Seinfeld, and on Seinfeld they were leaving on a high note, like they had a really good joke, and then they're like, "All right, I'm out, guys." Right, and it was just like leave on a high note, and you just totally encompassed in that answer. I mean, to know more information about Sheri, you guys definitely need to check her out on our website. Are there any social media sites or any lasting message that you want to get across? We're at the top of the hour.
Well, it's SheriFriedman.com, SheriFriedman. I have a Facebook page, Sheri Friedman, Intuitive Healer, and check in with yourself. Everybody knows their truth, so just check in and always make your decision from a place of love. If it looks like fear, go the opposite direction. It will not support you. And so I'm just feeling some gratitude right now for having this opportunity with the two of you. And thanks so much.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks so much, Sheri. This is Hamza Davis, and
I'm David Thompson.
And we are Intrinsic Motivation from a Homie's Perspective. It looks like we wrapped up another good podcast. Thanks again, Sheri, so much. And we'll catch you guys on the next podcast.
All right. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hamza?
Am I supposed to hang up, or are we done?